Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video, we will be previewing blank Game Week 30. As always, ask for your questions, discussion points and dilemmas over on Twitter. You give them to me and I will, to the best of my ability, answer them with some graphics and underlying statistics as well. If you are enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. But without further ado, let's jump into today's video. So guys, before we jump into today's video, I just want to give a massive shout out to Ultimate Champions who continue to sponsor the videos on this channel. Ultimate Champions is the first free-to-earn fantasy football game powered by the blockchain. Basically, you collect your favorite players as NFTs or non-fungible tokens, and then you build the best team you possibly can. When those players do well in real life, as with fantasy football, as you can see on your screen, the better the score they get, the better the rewards you can get. You can get different packs, you can get financial rewards as well, and then you can trade those players on the market with other managers as well. So it's a really cool game. Basically combines like FIFA with trading cards and also fantasy football. I'm currently playing the alpha right now. As you can see on your screen, this is my team that I'm currently building. Not the best team at the moment, but of course, the more that I play, the better players that I can collect, and as a result, the better the team I can build. The alpha is being played at the moment, which means the beta is coming very soon. And basically, if you want to get involved in this project and have the opportunity to play and build up the best possible team before other people, what you can do is you can click the link in the description, which will take you to the Ultimate Champions Discord server. Join the Discord server. There are like daily quizzes and stuff, which will allow you to get better packs and also to join the alpha and the beta as well. So you definitely want to get involved with this project, as well as the Discord community, which will be linked down below. I'll also link down below their Twitter account as well, so you can follow them over on Twitter and stay up to date with all of their latest updates, and you'll know when the game does go live. So thank you to Ultimate Champions for sponsoring the video, but without further ado, let's preview blank Game Week 30. So whilst the focus of today's video is blank Game Week 30, I thought I'd just really quickly cover the news about Game Week 31 and Game Week 33, because we have had confirmation that both will be double game weeks. Game Week 31, nice and simple. Everton and Burnley has been added into Game Week 31, which means that both Everton and Burnley will have a double game week. I don't think this is particularly interesting because Everton and Burnley aren't very good at the moment, on top of the fact that Burnley's double in particular isn't great at all, in considering that Manchester City is one of the fixtures in that double. So you've got that option there. If you've got Everton or Burnley players already, such as a Weghorst, maybe a Gordon, something like that, I probably wouldn't sell those players, but I'm not necessarily sure, we'll discuss this next week, whether I'll be scrambling to bring in players for double game week 31. Double game week 33 is a lot more difficult to try and explain, and there's obviously a lot of sort of permutations and combinations of which fixtures might go ahead and which fixtures might not go ahead. So I'm going to take you through which fixtures have been confirmed to be doubles in Game Week 33, which fixtures are likely to be in 33, and which fixtures might still possibly be there, but are less likely to be. So nice and simple. At the moment, 5 teams have had confirmation that they will have a double game week 33. So those teams are Brighton, Burnley, Leicester, Manchester United, and Newcastle. Those 5 teams are on your screen now. I would say that the ones that stick out to me here are probably Leicester. I think that's a really nice double against Newcastle and Everton. Newcastle have actually been a lot better recently, but I still do quite fancy that. Manchester United's interesting because of the Norwich fixture, but of course Liverpool away being the second one. I don't fancy Manchester United to get too much there. And then the Newcastle one's very interesting for me as well, against Leicester at home and Palace at home. 2 games at home. Newcastle obviously wanting to win both, in quite good form at the moment as well. Eddie Howe's getting quite a lot out of that Newcastle team. So there are quite a good few fixtures there that have already been announced. And when I'm looking at this now, this is just my current team. My current team doesn't have anyone that doubles out of these 5 combined teams. I don't have anyone from Brighton, Burnley, Leicester, Manchester United, and Newcastle. Now, I assume a couple of you might have a Fraser, you might have a Shah, you might have maybe potentially someone like Barnes or Maddison, especially for Game Week 30. So you might have a few of these players, but this is why, to me, straight away, without even looking at the other fixtures which might go into this game week, it does look like a good week to potentially free hit, because at the moment I've got absolutely no double game week players here. So these are the confirmed double game week 33 fixtures. The FA Cup, which is coming up, will not affect these games. However, there are some other teams that will double, and these teams are dependent on what happens in the FA Cup. So I'll just quickly switch to the next graphic we've got here. So these are the unconfirmed fixtures, and like I said, they are dependent on what happens in the FA Cup. So if Manchester City beat Southampton, Arsenal and Southampton will both double as well in double game week 33. Now, we would expect Manchester City to beat Southampton. That being said, Southampton are a little bit like Crystal Palace, a little bit of a bogey team for Manchester City. So that's not dead cert by any means. So Arsenal and Southampton likely to double, again, if Manchester City beat Southampton. However, that is not 100% confirmed, of course. And if Southampton do beat Manchester City, then Arsenal and Southampton will not double. So yes, we're assuming Arsenal will have a double, and that's great for those of us that are on the Arsenal triple up, but we need to wait for the FA Cup to find that out. Of course, if Manchester City beat Southampton, that also means that Wolves will blank. because that means the Manchester City Wolves game will not go ahead in double game week 33, and as a result, Wolves will blank. Wolves do not have to have that another fixture rearranged in there because they have no other fixtures to be rearranged. So just to confirm, if City beat Southampton, Arsenal and Southampton will both double and Wolves will blank. The rest of them are basically, if Chelsea, Liverpool or Manchester City win, it means they will not double. Right? So just to reconfirm that, if Chelsea, Liverpool or Manchester City win their games in the FA Cup, that means they will not double. So whilst the official FPL site has Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester City currently doubling, if all of those win, which we assume they will, remember, Chelsea have Aston Villa, Liverpool have Nottingham Forest, and Manchester City have Southampton. If they all win those games, then it means that they will not play in. That means they will not double. In game week 33. However, if Chelsea lose, it means they double against Leeds and Arsenal. If Liverpool lose, it means they double against Villa and Manchester United. And if Manchester City lose, it means they double against Wolves and Brighton. So we really do need to wait for these FA Cup fixtures. The most likely outcome is that Chelsea, Liverpool and City all win their games, and it just means that we will have Arsenal and Southampton doubling, and that therefore means that Wolves, Leeds and Villa will all be blanking. You can see the different combinations here. It could be that, for example, maybe just Chelsea lose. That means that Chelsea will double, and it means that Leeds will not blank. There's various, like I said, permutations and combinations that could happen. We do need to wait for the FA Cup. But I would be fairly comfortable going on the rough assumption at the moment that Arsenal and Southampton should double, and that Chelsea, Liverpool and City probably won't. What that does mean is, therefore, that Wolves, Leeds and Villa, of which we probably own a few assets, will be blanking. So just to put that all into sort of combination, we'll move on to the final graphic here. These are the likely fixtures for double game week 33. Those teams in like bright green, it means that they are confirmed to play in 33. Arsenal and Southampton are, of course, in like an orange because we're not sure if they'll be doubling, but it looks like they will be. And then we've got Wolves, Leeds and Villa are likely to blank, assuming once again that all of the favourites win their FA Cup ties. So hopefully that's been helpful for you. Let me know down below what your early thoughts are on double game week 33. We'll, of course, discuss it once we get the FA Cup results. Maybe I'll do a video after that to really discuss game week 33. But even regardless of which teams double now, with the 5 teams that you've got there, like I said, I don't own any players from there. Maybe if Arsenal go in, it makes it slightly less tempting. But if any of the big teams, such as Manchester City or Chelsea, also go into double game week 33 with a double, it will make me even more tempted. And like, for example, I already own double Wolves. I own a Leeds player. I know some of us will own Coutinho and Ramsey. So to me, I would say if you're on your final free hit, this does look like a really, really good opportunity to free hit. Of course, if you've only got one free hit left and that's it, you might want to save it for game week 36. And it might be that you're already on triple Arsenal. If Arsenal get the double, maybe bring in a couple of Leicester players for game week 30. And it does make it a lot easier to maybe navigate that. Based on what we can see here, therefore, teams to target at the moment are definitely Leicester 100%, because Leicester are the only team confirmed to play in blank game week 30 and also confirmed to double in game week 33. They're also confirmed to double in 36 and they're likely to double in 37 as well because they've got so many fixtures to rearrange. So Leicester are definitely a team to target. Outside of that, assuming that Southampton do lose to Manchester City, I would probably go for Arsenal next, because Arsenal also play in blank game week 30 and therefore would double in game week 33. And once again, Arsenal will either double in game week 36 against Tottenham or they'll double in game week 37. So Leicester and Arsenal definitely the teams to target. But like I said, let me know down below what your strategy is for 33. All this does is 100% lock in the free hit 33 to me, because I think it will be a fantastic week to get rid of my players that blank and also to load up on players that double that I wouldn't already own. Right, so let's actually move on to game week 30 now, specifically discussing game week 30. A lot of the questions were around midfielders, and in particular, a lot of them were around Barnes, sort of Saka, Kulusevski, those sort of mid-price midfield spots, and which midfielders we should be looking to bring in, whether we're looking short-term, long-term, etc. So what I've done is I've just selected 9 midfielders that I think are good options for different reasons, or just being talked about or transferred in by a few managers. We're going to discuss each of them, and then I'll give you sort of my top candidates. As you can see directly above my head, I have listed my top 5. Now, this graphic was made before the Arsenal game, and let me tell you, Martinelli looked absolutely fantastic. So maybe we bump him above slightly here. And it should be noted that all of these statistics are before the second round of game week 29 fixtures. That's just because I made the graphics yesterday, and also they don't update straight away sometimes. So what we've got is before the second round of game week 29 fixtures. So the cheapest player that you do have is Martinelli. Now, his underlying statistics are fantastic, and they have been for a long time. The issue that we've always had with Martinelli, and I discussed this on the Fantasy Football Fix channel earlier on in the week, is that when we look at per 90 statistics, it can be slightly misleading because Martinelli doesn't tend to get 90 minutes. That doesn't mean that he can't get 90 minutes. I mean, he often does, but more often than not, he'll sort of come off around sort of 70, 80 minutes, normally for Smith Rowe. Ødegaard came off in the second fixture in game week 29, so that's also an option as well. But generally speaking, it tends to be Smith Rowe on for Martinelli. So when you're looking at per 90 statistics, statistics, it's probably slightly misleading because he doesn't tend to get 90 minutes, and that goes for a few players on this list. With all of that being said, though, he's currently joint second on this list for goals per 90. He's in the sort of the top 5 or 6 for assists per 90. He's in the top 3 for touches in the box per 90. He's top for non-penalty expected goals per 90. Even his expected assist isn't bad at 0.18. That does put him third on the list for non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 at 0.56. I mean, that is very impressive for a £5.3 million midfielder. Very impressive indeed. And his expected FPL points per 90 is 5.68. So when you look at that, you think that's probably the sort of underlying statistics of a £7 or £8 million midfielder. It's just the minutes. And I do think he will start maybe 8 out of the remaining 9 games. Or 8, I think they've got 10 games, actually. 8 of the remaining 10 games, probably. For Arsenal, I would expect Martinelli to start. But I do think that Smith Rowe could start the odd game. And even when Martinelli does start, Smith Rowe is good enough to come off the bench around sort of the 70th, 80th minute. And because Martinelli does tend to play on the left, that is Smith Rowe's position. I think more often than not, it will probably be Martinelli coming off. So that does put me off slightly, but I still think he's a fantastic option. And even when you reduce those underlying statistics down to look at per start rather than per 90, he's still sitting around a 0.4 expected goal involvement. So I think Martinelli's a fantastic option. I would arguably now put him in my top 3 after seeing another fantastic performance last night. But he's definitely one of the best options for me for Game Week 30 and beyond. And like I said, if Arsenal do get that double Game Week 33, assuming that Southampton don't beat Manchester City in the FA Cup, then I think that Martinelli will be an even better option for double Game Week for Game Week 30, because you also get that double in Game Week 33. I've got Podence on here as another cheaper option. The underlying statistics aren't fantastic. You can see sort of average for most things, especially his expected goals non-penalty at 0.12 isn't that great. Only getting 3.2 touches in the box per 90. His non-penalty expected goal involvement's not terrible at 0.36, but most of that is coming from expected assists, and really you do want a little bit more goal threat from your midfielders and your attackers. The fixtures aren't bad, assuming that they play in Game Week 33 because they've got an extra fixture. But when you take that fixture out, they're sort of mid-table, the fixtures for Wolves over the upcoming game weeks. And they don't have any upcoming doubles because they have no fixtures to be rearranged. So for me, I'm not necessarily sure that Podence is the best shout. I think on a free hit, as we will discuss when we go through my free hit team, I'd be very tempted by Podence. But I think if I was using transfers and bringing in a player, considering the fact that they're likely to blank in 33, and he's not dead cert to start this game in Game Week 30, I would probably look elsewhere other than Podence. And to be honest, it's a very similar story for the next sort of cheaper midfielder, which is Eriksen. Eriksen's underlying statistics aren't great at all. In fact, they're one of the worst on this list. His expected goal involvement is the worst on the list. Of course, he's only played 218 minutes for Brentford thus far, but I would want to see a little bit more than what I'm seeing. The one good thing about Eriksen is that Leicester are very susceptible to conceding from set pieces. And of course, Brentford play Leicester in blank Game Week 30. So again, if you're on a free hit, I certainly think there are worse options than Eriksen. But for me, Podence and Eriksen are massive punts. You're basically going for some sort of gut feeling there, as opposed to going for the sort of underlying statistics. If you're going for a cheap midfielder and underlying statistics are your thing, then you've just got to go for Martinelli for me. Of course, if you're already on the Arsenal triple up, maybe you've got Saka, Lacazette and Ramsdale, then maybe you want to go for Podence and Eriksen. But for me, I would probably go all the way maybe down to a KDH, a Dewsbury Hall, or I would end up going up and above Martinelli, Podence and Eriksen. So that's just my opinion on it. Do let me know down below what you think of Podence and Eriksen. Then we've come to Kulusevski on the list, the 4th cheapest midfielder for me that I would be looking at. He's just been absolutely unbelievable since coming to Spurs. Spurs look fantastic. His underlying statistics are really, really good. As you can see, he's sort of joint 3rd for goals per 90. He's top of the list for assists per 90. Touches in the box, he's getting almost 6 touches in the box per 90. His non-penalty expected goal involvement is the 2nd best on this list at 0.57, and he's also got 5.21 expected FPL points per 90. Now, the only slightly disappointing thing about Kulusevski is that Spurs are now unlikely to double in Game Week 33. In fact, they're not going to double in Game Week 33 unless there's some sort of crazy announcement or another postponement. It does mean that they will double in either 36 or 37, but that is slightly off-putting knowing that Kulusevski is now not going to double in 33, and that's probably the only reason that Kulusevski is not my favourite option for the upcoming week, just because you don't get that double in 33. If you're free hitting in 33, then I would argue that maybe Kulusevski is top of the list, especially as Spurs fixtures from 31 onwards are actually pretty decent as well. I would argue that you could captain a Spurs player in 32 against Villa. So I do think Kulusevski is probably my top 2 options, potentially my top if you are free hitting in 33. You've then got Rafinha. I had to include Rafinha on this list, but he has been a little bit disappointing recently. But the underlying statistics are still pretty good. And he actually accumulated over double game week 28. He actually accumulated something like just over 2 expected goal involvement. So the underlying statistics are there. He's just not finishing his chances. But I do think with Bamford back in the team, assuming he can stay fit, I think Leeds will look a lot better. And I think that will massively benefit Rafinha. And we saw at the end of Game Week 29, the quality that he does have when he turns it on is absolutely unbelievable. So I don't think Rafinha is a priority to sell. However, I'm not sure that if I were buying a player this week, I would be looking at Rafinha. It's just my opinion on it. I don't think he's a terrible option, but I think there are better options to purchase, such as Kulusevski, Martinelli, Saka, Barnes, etc. Moving on to Harvey Barnes. The underlying statistics actually aren't that great. So this is more of a fixtures thing. Again, trying to get as many fixtures as you possibly can. And also just looking at the fixture in 30 and also the double in 33. They've got a lot of fixtures and they've got good fixtures as well. And therefore, I think you can definitely do worse than Harvey Barnes. You can see he's got the second best assist per 90 on the list. He's getting 6.13 touches in the box, which is the second best on this list. 0.24 expected goals is pretty decent as well. It puts his non-penalty expected goal involvement at 0.38. I'm not saying that's bad at all. Not bad at all. But when you can get essentially better than that with Martinelli at 5.3 million, you have to think, is Barnes worth the price that you're paying for him? Potentially when you get all of those extra fixtures. Like I said, he's playing in 30, doubling in 33, likely to double therefore in 36 and 37 as well, because they have 2 fixtures after that to be rearranged. You're just getting lots of extra fixtures with a Leicester player. So I think if you've already used your wild card, Barnes is a fantastic option there for that reason. As you can see, second best fixtures from an attacking perspective in the Premier League using the Fantasy Football Fix algorithm. Then you've got Saka, who is probably still my favourite choice. His underlying statistics aren't brilliant, but they're sort of in the top sort of 3 or 4 on this list. As you can see, touches in the box is where he strives. He's getting almost 7 touches in the box. Always very involved in the action. Always passes the eye test as well. That means he's 0.45 expected goal involvement per 90, which is highly impressive. I'm very happy with that for his price tag, and I think he's a fantastic option. That means that his expected FPL points is sitting at around 5, which isn't the best on the list, but again, I have no issue with that. And if Arsenal do get the double in Game Week 33, I think he's a great option. The reason I prefer Saka to Martinelli, despite the fact that Saka's underlying statistics aren't as good, is he's just 100% nailed to start on that right wing. And he's also more likely to see out 90 minutes, assuming that they're not sort of winning 4 or 5-0. But if they are, you would hope that Saka would have been involved in those goals. So I think due to the fact that Saka's more nailed on, I'd still rather pay the extra for him, even though the underlying statistics aren't quite as good per 90. You've then got Maddison. For me, I would prefer Barnes to Maddison. Now, the underlying statistics are actually slightly better for Barnes. You can see his expected goals is higher and his non-penalty expected goal involvement is also higher. So, statistically, Maddison is the slightly better pick over Barnes. But assuming that Leicester stick with the 4-3-3, their 3 midfielders are going to be Ndidi, Dewsbury Hall and Tielemans. That means that Barnes will be on the left, Iheanacho or Daka will be up top, Vardy when he's back fit. That leaves only the right wing open. Now, Albrighton tends to play on the right wing. Outside of that, they have some other options, something such as Lookman. They could play Iheanacho out on the right with Daka up top. Maddison just isn't a right winger. I'm not saying he's bad there, but if you look at his touch map, we discussed this again on the Fantasy Football Fix channel. Maddison's touch map suggests that he doesn't tend to operate out on the right. So they've got a few options here. They either bench Maddison, they switch back to a 4-2-3-1, which they have on a few occasions, and play Maddison through the middle, which means probably dropping Dewsbury Hall and just playing Ndidi and Tielemans. Or they play like a 4-3-1-2, which sounds like a bit of a FIFA formation, but it would allow you to keep the 3 central midfielders, play Maddison in that central attacking mid spot. But it would mean that rather than Barnes being on the left where he's so effective, he would be playing up top alongside Iheanacho or Daka. I personally think it's more likely that they either stick with a 4-3-3 and play Maddison out of position, or they switch to a 4-2-3-1 and play Maddison centrally. But there is always that risk that he just starts on the bench. So for me, I'm just not willing to do that. I think no matter what formation they play, Harvey Barnes should start. And as a result, I think I would prefer Barnes despite Maddison's underlying statistics being slightly better. And then we finish with Coutinho. Now, I sold Coutinho last week, so I obviously don't think he's the best option on here, but I've put him currently 5th on this list. The reason for that is despite only playing 688 minutes, which isn't a massive sample size, he does have the best underlying statistics on this list. So he's got the best goals per 90, the best non-penalty expected goals per 90, or the second best, non-penalty expected goals per 90. That puts him at having the best non-penalty expected goal involvement on this list at 0.63. Now, he is the most expensive of the players on this list, so you do need to take that into account, but that is still a highly impressive statistic, and that does put his expected FPL points per 90 at 6.16. So I definitely still think it might be worth considering Coutinho. The issue with Coutinho is that Aston Villa's fixtures just aren't great long term, as well as the fact that they're likely to also blank in Game Week 33. So for me, I think we might have missed the boat slightly with Coutinho, but I do think he could turn it on against anyone. And I think if you just don't fancy Maddison, Barnes, Rafinha, Saka, maybe you already own a couple of them, I definitely think you could do worse than Coutinho, but he wouldn't be at the top of my list. So putting all of that together, I essentially think that probably the top 3 options are probably Saka, Kulusevski. I'd say top 4. Really, there are 4 standouts for me. Saka, Kulusevski, Barnes and Martinelli. I think based on underlying statistics and based on the way the teams are playing, it would be Saka, Kulusevski and Martinelli for me. The only reason that Barnes goes into there is just the sheer amount of fixtures, and also due to the fixtures actually being pretty good as well. Like I said, I really like the Brentford fixture in 30, and I also like the double game week 33 fixtures against Newcastle and Everton. So those are my top game week 30 midfielders. Let me know down below who you fancy having. I've currently got Saka, Kulusevski and Rafinha, and I'm probably not going to be adding any of the players on this list because I already have triple up on Spurs. I already have a triple up on Arsenal as well, and because I'm free hitting game week 33, I don't think going for Barnes and Maddison is really a necessity for me because I can just load up on those on my free hit in 33. So the next section, there was a lot of questions around it. Basically, have we missed the boat with Wolves? So I think a few people have maybe got sort of 4 or 5 players that don't play in blank game week 30. And as a result, they're looking to bring in a decent defender or maybe a cheap attacker that plays in 30 and has decent fixtures long term. Of course, Wolves have probably the best fixture in game week 30 against Leeds. And then they have 2 decent fixtures in 31 and 32 as well. So a lot of people are potentially looking at the likes of Cody, Aït-Nouri and Saiss. Do I think you've missed the boat? I think slightly for sure. And remember, they had obviously the 2 double game weeks, one in 26 and then the one in 28 as well. So you have missed 2 double game weeks with Wolves and also the blank game week 27 fixture. So the optimal time to bring in Wolves players was definitely in game week 26. I do still think there are worse options, though, especially with their cheaper defenders. The likes of Saiss, Cody, and then Aït-Nouri in particular is very cheap. He's obviously not on this list here due to being a slight rotation risk. But I do think that they are decent options still for the next 3 fixtures. What I've got on the screen is I've got the points per match, non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90, and expected FPL points per 90. We've just spoken about Podence. I do actually think if you're going for an attacker, he's probably the best option on this list. Jimenez's underlying statistics just aren't very good. Now, when you put penalties into the equation, they become slightly better, but you can't really rely on penalties, and he's definitely not warranting the £7.6 million price tag, whereas Podence at 5.5 million, you could definitely do worse. I still think Martinelli would definitely be my first choice at that price point. And I would probably, if you're not going to go for Martinelli, I'd probably go all the way down to someone like a Gordon or a Dewsbury Hall. But I don't think Podence is a terrible choice. Where I think the value is still to be had with Wolves is with Cody and with Saiss and then maybe Aït-Nouri with their defence, because their defensive data isn't terrible. It's definitely regressed in recent weeks, but it's not the worst in the league. And I do think that they look like they've tightened up in the last couple of fixtures. I haven't got the underlying statistics for that small of a sample size because it's really difficult to try and draw trends from that. But I think they've tightened up slightly and gone back to the Wolves of earlier on in the season. At least it looks like that in the recent weeks. But the fixtures have been a lot easier for them as well, which is definitely worth noting. I've also just noted what their sort of team data is like. So Wolves are currently 9th in the league for expected goals conceded per 90. Remember, they were sort of about 4th or 5th earlier on in the season, which tells you that recently they've been in the bottom half of the table. But like I said, the last couple they have improved. So they're essentially sitting sort of around mid-table for expected goals conceded, mid-table as a defensive side in the Premier League this season. However, they are currently 17th in the league for expected goals per 90. What that essentially means is that they're pretty decent, sort of mid-table, slightly worse in recent weeks for expected goals conceded defensive data, but going forward, they're absolutely horrific. Across the entirety of the season, they've really struggled. Apart from that 4-0 battering of Watford, they've really struggled to score goals across the season. So I personally wouldn't be backing any of the attackers. I would avoid buying Podence, Hwang and Jimenez in myself. But I do still think it might be worth investing in one defender because I don't think there are many other good options that also play in 30 and have decent fixtures in 31 and 32. The thing that is worth noting is that they are likely to blank in game week 33, as we discussed in the previous section. So you do need to think about, if you're not free hitting in 33, is it worth bringing in a player that's going to cause you to have a blank and maybe make you struggle to field 11? Or you might have to transfer them out once again. So it's worth looking at 33 and maybe trying to decide how confident are you that Manchester City beat Southampton? Because if they do, then of course Wolves will blank in 33. But with 33, with the fixture in 33 currently going ahead, the Fantasy Football Fix algorithm says that they've currently got the 6th best fixtures from an attacking perspective and the 4th best fixtures from a defensive perspective. All this does for me is reinforce the idea that if you're going to go for a Wolves player, it should be a defender. For me, I wouldn't be on a double Wolves defence. I'm currently on double Wolves defence, but that's because I've already invested there. So I think if you've got one Wolves defender, that's enough. I think if you don't own any Wolves players, investing in one of Cody, Saiss or Aït-Nouri would be absolutely fine for me. I think they're all decent options. Let me know down below, do you still own Wolves players? I was on a triple up until last week. I didn't enjoy that. Now I'm down to a double up. I think by the time I wildcard in 34, I probably would have taken out all of my Wolves players because it definitely looks like they've declined slightly in recent weeks. Yeah, we're having this chat once again, Son versus Kane, but it is slightly different this week because previously we discussed this in Game Week 28. I think most of us were deciding, do we go for Son or do we go for Kane? That was the decision to be had. Now, because of obviously the double in 29 and the fixture in 30, I think most people already own Son or Kane. If you already own Kane, I think you're laughing. I think you're happy. I think you just keep Kane and move with that. If you own both, I think you're still pretty happy. You probably don't sell Son at this point if you already own Kane. You just keep both of them for game week 30 and then maybe look to move off Son if you want to downgrade in the future. I think the trickiest position to be in is probably those that own Son but don't own Kane, and the only way to get Kane is by selling Son. And there are a remarkable amount of people in that position. So if you're watching this and you're in this position, I do feel for you because it's not an easy decision at all. So I'm going to try and give you the advice that I think I would do in this scenario. But like you know on this channel, I try not to tell you what to do, and I'm going to try and give you both sides of the coin so that you can make the best, most informed decision yourself. So again, major thing to notice is it's an extra £1.5 million for Kane. It's worth also noting that now that Spurs don't double in 33, maybe that's less of a reason to make this move, because Kane would have been the very clear captaincy favourite in game week 33 for me if they'd have got that double. I think the fact that Salah is unlikely to get the double, I think Kane as sort of the second best premium at the moment, maybe even the best premium in the game, I think he would have been a standout captaincy choice. But the fact that he doesn't now double in 33, I don't think you have such an issue with like effective ownership and him being the clear captaincy shout. But he is probably still the clear captaincy shout in game week 30, I would say, against West Ham. And then in game week 32, Liverpool, Manchester City play against each other, and we're unlikely to get a double game week. I think Kane against Aston Villa is, again, probably the clear captaincy shout there. So realistically, you could be looking to captain Kane in two of the next 3 game weeks. In 31, you could even captain him as well, but you're likely to probably captain Salah against Watford. So it does make more sense to bring him in for that reason, and it maybe makes sense to pay the extra £1.5 million to get Kane for that reason. However, if you're not looking to captain him in 32, you're not looking to captain in 33, maybe not in 31 either, is it worth doing it just for a captaincy in 30? That's up to you to try and decide. The fixtures in general for Spurs are pretty good, but like I said, no double game weeks coming up, which does slightly reduce their appeal. What I've done for the underlying statistics is I've looked since game week 24, which is when Kulusevski came in. So Kulusevski coming into the team. Some people have had a debate around this. I think if you watch football and you watch the Spurs games, Kulusevski coming in has had an impact on Son and Kane. Kane is dropping slightly deeper once again. Son and Kulusevski are overlapping on the wings. It has meant that Son stays a little bit wider, though, rather than Son coming in and supporting Kane, because Kulusevski can do a similar job. I think both of them are staying quite wide, and they're sort of attacking in behind quite wide. They do make those sort of darting runs into the middle occasionally, but I think generally speaking, since Kulusevski come in, we've seen a little bit of a wider positioning for Son. So I thought it'd be interesting to look at the underlying statistics since Kulusevski came in. What you can see is that Kane is definitely coming out on top. Now, what I should say also is that Kane across the season also comes out slightly on top as well, but it's a much closer gap. The reason that I don't think that's necessarily very useful is because, of course, Conte only came in midway through the season. Also, since Conte's come in, they've made a few changes as well. At some points in the season, Son was playing up top alongside Kane, so I think it's very tricky to look at statistics across the entirety of the season. So I'm more interested in recent weeks, and Kane is definitely coming out on top. You can see expected FPL points per 90. Kane's basically got an extra expected FPL point per 90. Non-penalty expected goal involvement, Kane's sitting at 0.77, which is really, really good. When you put penalties in, it's up to around sort of 0.85, 0.9, which is really excellent for Kane. He's definitely the asset to own in FPL at the moment. Son's 0.62, though, is definitely impressive, especially considering he is cheaper than Kane as well. 0.62 is definitely a good underlying statistic for expected goal involvement, but it's of course not as good as Kane's. At 0.15 less, that is quite substantial, especially when you take into account penalties as well. Big chances per 90, again, highly impressive from Kane, almost double that of Son. So Son's still getting 0.67 big chances per 90. Harry Kane's getting 1.25 big chances per 90, so he's getting over a big chance per 90. And that is absolutely ideal when you're looking at captaincy. And then big touches in the box, they're very, very similar. Kane just about edging that. But when you look at total shots, so what I've included on the screen, rather than touch maps, I've got their shot maps. Kane has taken 30 shots since game week 24. This is not including, again, the underlying statistics from the second game in game week 29. So just before that game against Brighton, Kane had taken 30 shots. Son had taken 14 shots. So Kane is taking double the amount of shots of Son at the moment, and a lot of those are in the box. Look at the amount of shots in the box for Kane. So I guess what I'm saying is Kane's definitely the better asset. Kane is most likely to outscore Son over future weeks, going off the underlying statistics that we can see here. So for me, it is worth taking a hit to move Son to Kane, in my personal opinion. On top of the fact that I just think there are no good strikers in the game at the moment, but there are a ton of midfielders that I would want. So I think you could easily do like Son to Barnes, and then one of your strikers, whoever it may be, maybe you've got a decent option in there, I don't know, such as if you can get King or Dennis up to Kane, you might want to do that. Maybe even move Jimenez to Kane. Lacazette to Kane is still probably worth it. I just think Kane's the guy to own at the moment, and I think you're going to want to captain him in 30. I think you're going to want to captain him in 32 as well. So I think it's personally worth taking the hit. The flip side of it, which is not my opinion, is that there isn't that much of a gap between our underlying statistics. So when you look, yes, there is an extra expected FPL point per 90 over the previous few game weeks since Kulusevski came into the team. So Kane's at 6.46, Son is at 5.45. Over the next 10 games, therefore, Kane is, if you carry on at that rate, it gets in an extra expected 10 FPL points over the next 10 fixtures. That's not a massive difference. Yes, captaincy does slightly exaggerate that, but if Kane outscores Son by 10 points over the next 10 game weeks, that's not a massive difference. And you would say you're pretty happy then as a Son owner that he's not done much more. And of course, that's taken into account the fact that Son doesn't suddenly start improving over future weeks as well. Maybe the international break will rejuvenate Son. So based on the underlying statistics, I think Kane is the better asset to own. I would take the -4, but the underlying statistics there aren't that much of a difference between the two. And if you ask an analytics guy, someone that is very heavily invested in statistics, they would probably advise that there's not enough of a difference to maybe warrant or justify the hit. So sorry if it's slightly sort of confusing what I've said there. The realistic answer is that no one knows what's going to happen in the future. And it feels like one of those decisions where it will backfire either way. You take out Son will suddenly haul. You don't bring in Kane, and Kane will just continue to fire. I do really feel for those of you that are in that position. If you are in that position where you own Son and you don't own Kane, let me know down below, what are you doing? Are you going to bring in Kane for a hit? Are you just going to keep Son potentially? If you've got 2 free transfers, I think that's a lot easier to do. The -4 does make it a little bit trickier. I'll be honest, I think if I were in this position, I think I'd do it. I think I would just get on Kane. I'd admit that I made a mistake going for Son over Kane. I'd bring in another really decent midfielder such as Saka, Kulusevski or Barnes in for Son, and I would upgrade one of my strikers to Kane. But do let me know down below what you would plan on doing. So I have built a free hit team using FPL.team just to plan it. So I still don't think free hit 30 is the way to go. I think even if you've got 2 free hits, I would personally save it. I think assuming you can field maybe 5 or 6 players, I probably wouldn't play the free hit. We'll discuss that in a bit more detail in the questions asked section at the end. But for me, it just doesn't justify it. If you can field 6 players, you're only getting an extra 5 players by playing the free hit. And it's likely that some of those players will clash against each other. I don't think they're necessarily from the best teams. I don't think there are any easy fixtures to predict here. Villa, Arsenal, West Ham, Tottenham, Leicester versus Brentford. I would really struggle to predict any of the 4 fixtures this week. So for me, when it's that difficult to predict and there's no standout options apart from the likes of Kane, I just don't think that I would personally be on the free hit. But for those of you that are, here's a rough team that I've put together. I think there are a few key talking points. The first of which is defenders. I don't think there'll actually be many clean sheets in this blank game week. I think there are a couple. I think Wolves versus Leeds is likely to see a clean sheet for one of them, just because both teams are so poor going forwards and they're both slightly better from a defensive perspective. So there might be clean sheets there, but I don't predict many clean sheets. And as a result, I think you want some attacking defenders, because even if there aren't clean sheets, you still want the opportunity to get points from your defenders. So the options that I've got here are Tierney, Ait-Nouri and Pereira. I think Ait-Nouri and Pereira would definitely be locked in. I think they're both pretty attacking for their teams, both playing in sort of advanced roles that you would see from fullbacks. And I just think Pereira is a pretty exciting pick, and Ait-Nouri should go back into the starting 11 and a decent chance for clean sheet. Tierney's the only one I'm not sure about there, but I would want to cover the Arsenal clean sheet just because they've got about 100% combined effective ownership in the Arsenal defence. So I would want to just cover that just in case, because you don't want to lose out points on a free hit just because you didn't cover a very popular defence. And then I've got Cash on the bench. If you don't want to go for any Arsenal attackers, or potentially if you've only got one Arsenal attacker such as I have, I think Cash is definitely a decent option as well. You could go for Luka Dean if you want to be trolled potentially in there as well. The midfield is where there's basically the most options to choose from. I've currently got double Tottenham midfield in Kulusevski and Son. I did sort of basically dabble with the idea of taking Son out, but I just think Son's going to be very highly owned again. He is still fantastic. The underlying statistics are still very good. And I think West Ham will be pretty fatigued from the Europa League. And I'm just not sure that I fancy them, potentially without Bowen, potentially without Antonio as well, to get that many opportunities. And I think they're probably just going to sit back and allow Spurs to attack them. So I think Kulusevski and Son are great options. The only thing is, based on how I've just said that I think the game might go, I do still think that Doherty and Reguilon are great options as well. So it might be that you want to drop Son, get Doherty or Reguilon in, and then get another midfielder in, maybe potentially someone like Coutinho. Outside of that, I think that Barnes and Podence are both 2 very, very good options. I think they're both really nice on free hit. They're both quite exciting as well. And then you've got Saka in there. Again, very highly owned and also just a very good option for this week. You could potentially go for Martinelli and Saka, or Martinelli instead of Saka if you want to go for a slight differential. But I'm fairly happy with that midfield. And then the two strikers is, of course, going to be Kane captain. And then it's basically, do I want to play Tony or Lacazette? Of course, Jimenez is an option as well. But like I said, I don't think the underlying statistics are that great. Podence is putting up very similar underlying statistics himself. So for me, it would be between Lacazette and Tony. I think I would just about lean towards Tony, just because I think goals for Brentford against Leicester are slightly more likely. Again, I know I've got Pereira in there, but I've got him mainly in there for the attacking output as well as the potential chance for a clean sheet. So I don't really like it, particularly the free hit draft, but I haven't seen a free hit draft that I do like. For me, there are just too many clashes. There are too many difficulties trying to choose which players to pick and which way the games are going to go. And I think for most of us that own sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 players, I think that's probably enough. Maybe make 1 or 2 transfers, roll with the players you've got, and just trust the process there. But do let me know down below. If you are free hitting, feel free to drop your draft below. Maybe prove me wrong by presenting a really nice draft. But for me, I'm just not that sure that free hit 30 is the way to go. So just to finish up with some other questions, I have sort of mentioned these throughout the video, but just to recap, because they were quite popular questions that have been asked. The first is, how many players is enough? If I have 6, 7, 8 players, do I still need to continue to keep bringing in players? I've told you my opinion on this. The opinion is no. I don't think the number matters as much as it is the players that you're bringing in, the players that you have. Assuming you have Kane, preferably, but if not Son, I think they're both decent captaincy shouts this week. Then maybe if you've got one of Kulusevski and Doherty to complement that, maybe Saka or Lacazette as an attacker. Maybe you've got one of Ramsdale or Tierney, maybe a Wolves player in there as well. I think that's fine. Like, I don't think you need to have 11 players. I've got 9, and to be honest, I'd probably be happy rocking with 7, because a couple of those just aren't that great of players to have in there anyway. For example, double Wolves defense probably isn't necessary. Having Rafinha in there probably isn't necessary, right? If I didn't have those players as well, I'd still be fairly happy rocking the players that I've got. So for me, I would say maybe like 4 or 5 is probably the cutoff, and it's just making sure that you have the major bases covered. Because for a lot of people, they'll say, yes, I've got 11 players, but they've maybe got, I've seen Coutinho and Ramsey up against Tierney and Ramsdale, right? Yes, they've got 4 players there, but it's very unlikely that all 4 of those players are going to score a lot of points. So probably a couple of those at least are going to get 2 pointers. So I don't think the number's an issue. I think it's about the quality and the players that you've got. Try and cover Kane captaincy if you can. If not, Son's still a good option. And then cover a few of the other players that might be fairly highly owned as well. The second question, very popular, is it worth taking out Salah in game week 30 and bringing him back in for 31 for free versus for a hit? So obviously it's slightly more appealing if this is for free. And I think a lot of people aren't just going to do Salah to Barnes and then Barnes to Salah, because I think that's the most popular one. I think what a lot of people are considering is maybe something like Salah to Barnes and then Coutinho to Salah, because Coutinho's fixtures sort of turn for the worse after 31 onwards. So a lot of people are tempted to take out Salah and then bring him back in, but for 2 different players. And in doing so, they get Barnes for 30 and beyond, and then they also lose Coutinho in 31, which they might want to do anyway. So I've seen that as quite a popular move. I don't dislike that at all. I think that's absolutely fine. What you need to consider is it worth using 2 transfers to get in Barnes in game week 30 and lose Coutinho in 31? And are you happy to lose potentially up to around sort of 0.3, 0.4 million on Salah, depending what price you bought him at? If you bought him earlier on this season, it might be even slightly more than that. So for me, I probably wouldn't do it, and I'm not going to be doing it. I think it's slightly more appealing if you're not free hitting in 33, because getting Barnes in would be absolutely massive, because like I said, he's got a very nice double in 33. He's even a decent captaincy shout. So I think if you're not free hitting in 33, it's slightly more appealing. But for me, I just don't see the necessity to do so. I don't think bringing in Barnes is worth making 2 transfers to take Salah out and then bring him back in. But I don't dislike it. If someone told me that they're doing it, I'd be absolutely fine with it, but it's probably not for me. Question 3 is, if Luca Dean is still a doubt, we still don't know at this stage at the time of me recording this, should we remove him? If so, who are the best replacements? So I would probably remove him, yes, if he is a doubt, because from 31 onwards, you're not going to want Luca Dean anyway. Like I said, Aston Villa's fixtures do turn for the worst. They're likely to blank in 33. So for me, I would take him out. I think your options are probably, preferably, a Leicester defender of some kind. Now, picking a Leicester defender is super tricky. Maybe Pereira. Maybe you go for Fofana because it looks like he's back in the squad. And Marty looks like he might lose his place soon. Soyuncu might be fine. So it's tricky. You might want to sort of consult with some Leicester fans. But if you can't go for a Leicester defender, it'd be an Arsenal defender for me. If you're already on a triple Arsenal, then maybe you do go for a Cody, Saiss, or Aït-Nouri just to get you through the next sort of 3 fixtures up until game week 33. But yeah, I would take out Luca Dean if he's a doubt. I just don't think it's worth keeping him. I guess you could technically go from Luca Dean to Matty Cash if you wanted to. But like I said, you're going to want to lose these Aston Villa players sooner rather than later. It seems a waste of a transfer for me. And then the fourth and final question, we did discuss this just a minute ago. If you have 2 free hits, would you use one in game week 30 or still keep both? I would personally still keep both. Assuming you don't have a bench boost, I think a free hit in 33 and a free hit in 36 will be absolutely brilliant. And I guarantee you'll see a massive boost in both those weeks. They just look like absolutely optimal weeks to play your free hit. So if you've got 2, I would say 33 and 36. Of course, if you've got a bench boost still as well, you'd probably want a bench boost in 36. As a result, you're probably free hit in 33 and free hit in 37 as well. So regardless of the situation you've got with your other chips, I think if you've got 2 free hits, I would keep both. If you've got 1 free hit, I definitely wouldn't be using it in 30. It's just not optimal for me. Try and get out 5, 6 players. Rock with it. You'll get a red arrow. Of course you will, or you most likely will. Get through it, and then you can make that ground back up in 33 or 36. So that's my personal opinion on those questions. Let me know down below what you think of that. I'm very interested specifically in that second question about the Salah sort of hokey cokey, taking him out and then bringing him back in. I know that'll be quite popular this week. For me, I'd probably rather just save the transfers myself. So just want to give a massive shout out to the members of the channel, the Raptor Hall of Fame. We speak about members all the time here on this channel. Basically, if you want to become a member of the channel, you can do so by clicking the join button next to the subscribe button or clicking the link in the description. It's like the second or third link that says if you want to become a member, click here. With memberships, you get loads of perks. So for Rap Tier 1 members, you get personalized feedback on your team. So if you want me to rate your team, you can send it to me via DM and I'll rate it for you. You also get entered into our private channel on Discord where there are all of the other members that you can see on here, all discussing their teams. We've got some incredible ranks in our mini league at the moment. Johnny and Scott in particular are doing absolutely fantastically. I think Johnny's ranked 250th in the world at the moment. He's a Rap Tier 1 member. He was actually the second person to sign up at the as a Rap Tier 1 member. So there are some seriously good people in that, seriously good managers in that chat. So if you want personalized feedback from myself and other managers, you can join and become a Rap Tier 1 member. You can also get into our Rap Tier 1 mini league as well, where all of us guys are in a Rap Tier 1 mini league. And of course, you get member shout outs and you get priority reply on live streams as well. Rap Tier 2 is basically just a badge next to your name, member shout outs, and you get priority reply in comments and on live stream as well. So it's slightly less, but it's also less of a price as well. So if you want to become a member, please feel free to do so. Like I said, click the join button next to the subscribe button or just click the link in the description. Content will continue to be free, but if you want to support the channel and get some cool perks in return, feel free to become a member. I would appreciate it, as you know. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 30 preview done and dusted. I do hope you enjoy and I hope I answered your question in some format. If I didn't, ask your question down below. And if I can't get around to it, hopefully one of the lovely people in the comments will be able to help you. If you are enjoying the content here on this channel, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, as I said. And if you want to support the channel above and beyond that, please make sure to join the Ultimate Champions Discord server. Link will be in the description. And also consider becoming a member as well. We will be doing a deadline stream tomorrow. I think I'll be going live at around 4:30. But if you turn on notifications, you will know when I schedule that live stream, which I'll be doing later this evening. We'll be having a really good, long live stream before the deadline. Can answer all of your questions there as well. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.